Lighten up, don't get mad. I was so dumbfounded, I couldn't say a word. I rushed to my mother and cried out to her. My mother then hugged my shoulder and quietly said, "Let's head home." At my mother's words, I weakly replied, "Yeah. My name is Mary Johnson. I work as an office employee. And I have a boyfriend whom I'm gonna marry soon. His name is Jake Williams. Jake has a kind nature, handsome looks, a stable job with a good income. Truly, he's a catch in every way. However, why someone as perfect as Jake would date someone as ordinary as me remains a mystery. So, once out of curiosity, I asked him why he's with me. Hey, why are you with me?" "Why?" "Well, 'cause I wanted to be with you," Jake replied with a smile. His answer was pretty much textbook, which was somehow both reassuring and yet a bit unsettling. But all in all, after asking, I felt more at peace than before. But for some reason, I had a nagging feeling inside. I chose to ignore that emotion. I loved Jake that much. And the reason I loved Jake so much is because I despise my biological father. My father is the complete opposite of Jake, very cold-hearted. He never showed up for school events, and we've never spent Christmas together. He'd always prioritize his work over me, despite being his daughter. It's because he managed several companies. Thanks to my father working like a devil, my mother could be a stay-at-home mother and we never had financial difficulties. However, I hardly remember receiving much affection from him growing up. That's why I came to see my father, who prioritized his job over his daughter, as a demon who had sold off any trace of kindness somewhere. No matter how busy he might be, as long as we're a family, I believe that it's one of his duties to spend time with us. Maybe that's why I grew to be uncomfortable around him. I'm sure my father and I have completely opposing values. But Jake, whom I deeply love, surely wouldn't do to a family what my father did. I was confident in his character and I truly believed in him. That's why I confidently went ahead with the engagement party, but in the end, my father couldn't make it. The reason he couldn't come was, once again, because he was too busy with work. At this point, I could predict his excuses for not showing up without even asking. Just recalling that time makes me feel so bad, I can't help but sigh deeply. Hearing my loud sigh, Jake looked at me with concern. "What's wrong? You seem down." See? Unlike my father, Jake immediately notices and cares about how I'm feeling. I knew I was right about him. I was just wondering why my dad can't be more like you, always attentive to me. Well, we'd have to ask your father about that. I'm sorry, discussing this right now. It's okay. On a happier note, we finally got married. Yes, I'm so happy. That's right, today Jake and I officially tied the knot. I feel silly to think of my father on such a happy day. All right. How about some barbecue to celebrate our marriage? Sounds good. And so, Jake and I headed into a barbecue joint. Oh, what would you like to drink? Well, I'll go with a soft drink. All right. I'll have a soft drink too. That was a lie. In reality, I wanted an alcoholic beverage, not a soft drink. But reading between the lines, I chose to go with what Jake was having. Jake never drinks alcohol when he's with me. It's the one thing about him that I just can't get along with. Why can't I accept this about Jake? Well, there's a certain loneliness when you're the only one drinking alcohol in a group. It's a sentiment most drinkers might understand. Besides, I felt embarrassed being tipsy in front of someone who's completely sober. So, when I'm on a date with Jake, I had to resist the urge to drink, and I hated that. Once, I asked Jake about it. Hey, Jake, do you not drink? After a brief pause, he replied. Yeah, I'm just not really into alcohol. I see. I thought I detected his expression was grim at that moment. Or was that just my imagination? However, to avoid being labeled as annoying or to risk Jake distancing himself from me, I never broached the topic of alcohol again. Sometimes, I wished Jake and I could enjoy drinks together. Deep down, I felt a bit of resentment. But then I'd remind myself, isn't it enough just to have Jake by my side, and pretend those feelings didn't exist? This is delicious. Seeing Jake enjoy his meal with a smile, I chastised myself for dwelling on such trivial matters. Looking back, it was clear to me that I was forcing myself to compromise, fearing the loss of Jake. Now when I think about it, that part of me that gets too immersed in a relationship might not be so healthy. But knowing me, I probably won't change. Moreover, I don't even remember the taste of the barbecue we had that day. It's been so long since then. By that time, Jake and I had already started living together. I had imagined a sweet honeymoon phase awaiting me, but Jake was no prince. Surprisingly, ever since we began living together, Jake started behaving selfishly contrary to his previous kind attitude. To be specific, before we moved in together, he would almost always take me to places I wanted to go on our dates. But after moving in, Jake only wanted to go where he desired, making it a stark contrast from before. Maybe after our families met and we got officially registered, Jake felt he had secured me. That's probably why his selfish behaviors increased. But I thought, maybe Jake had been compromising for my sake all this while. So, I pretended to enjoy our dates despite feeling the opposite. Perhaps because I kept overlooking such things, Jake began leaving his clothes on the floor at home, not bothering to put them in the laundry. When I reflect on those times, I realize I couldn't confront Jake because I loved him so much. From my past experiences, I believed if I angered a man, he would drift away, so I never expressed my displeasure. Also, we were planning our wedding soon, and I didn't want any fights. But sometimes, I regret not confronting Jake before our wedding, thinking I could have understood his true nature. Thinking about it now doesn't change the past. In the end, I turned a blind eye to Jake's selfishness as our wedding day approached. On the day of our wedding, friends from both sides gathered at the venue, celebrating our marriage joyously. Of course, Jake's parents were present, and so was my mother. But as expected, my father didn't show. Instead of sighing about the usual reality, I decided to devote the role of a cheerful bride. Voices of friends showering me with congratulations like Mary. Congrats, and you look beautiful. Today is a day where Jake and I are the stars, so let's make the most of it. With that thought, I took a big gulp from my glass of white wine. The guys cheered, saying, "Look at the bride go." Cheers. They seemed to be getting tipsy too. I can handle my liquor pretty well, but I wondered if they could. As I was concerned about the others, a man approached Jake. He seemed to be a friend from Jake's hometown a few years older than him, and he had an intimidating look. "Jake. Come on, have a drink. You're being out drunk by the bride." The friend pressed Jake assertively. But... Jake was taken aback by the friend's unreasonable demand, but he glared at Jake menacingly. "Hey. What's the matter? If you won't drink, I'll spill the beans on some of your old misdeeds to your bride. You wouldn't want that, would ya?" "Alright, I got it." I was shocked by the friend's inexplicable threat, but it seemed Jake had done something in the past and didn't want it exposed, so he drank. Yes. That's the spirit. But what happened next was a nightmare. Suddenly, Jake started laughing, stood up, and shockingly, smashed the wedding cake right into my face. My vision was immediately obstructed. "Hey! Jake!" I was panicking, but nearby I could hear his friends laughing, saying, "Man, that's hilarious. It's unbelievable to think they found joy in throwing cake in someone's face." I wondered if this sense of humor was typical of roughnecks. Could it be that Jake was friends with such a senior? Maybe Jake used to be a troublemaker too? "Jake, what are you thinking? This is too much." But, perhaps because he was drunk, Jake responded with, "We're all having fun, don't get mad." I was just speechless. I rushed over to my mother, tears streaming down my face. My mother held me and softly said, "Let's go home." I nodded weakly. Yeah. I was utterly drained, and so was my mother. At that moment, Jake's parents approached us, their faces turning pale. "We're so sorry, our Jake has. We are truly sorry. We never knew he had such a bad side when he drinks." It seemed Jake's parents were also at a loss about the situation. "It's all right, it's Jake's fault and not yours, anyway," my mother said with a kind voice, but her furrowed brow told another story. I'd always seen my mother as a gentle person, so seeing her like this was new to me. As my mother and I were about to leave the venue, someone suddenly swung open the door with great force. Unbelievably, that man was my father. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he still had that cool, reserved air about him. However, he quickly noticed something was amiss at the venue. "What's going on here? It seems things got rowdy while I was away." "What happened, Mom?" "Well, Jake, Mary's husband, started acting strange after having a drink and threw cake all over Mary's face. He always seemed so calm and polite before. I don't know what to do now." "I see. So the well-mannered groom turned bizarre after some booze. That explains the whipped cream all over Mary's face." "Yes, that's what happened." My father acted quickly after understanding the situation. "Hey, Dad, what are you?" To my shock, my father dashed towards a drunken Jake. All eyes in the room immediately shifted to him. He was dressed in an expensive-looking suit with neatly styled hair. Though he was an older man, he was lean and moved with grace. "Who's that guy? Isn't he just a regular guest?" "Yeah, but I feel like I've seen him somewhere before." Many in the venue mistakenly thought he was Jake's father. As my father approached Jake, he demanded, "What's the meaning of this?" Then, while still drunk, Jake said something like this to my father. "Who the hell are you? Introduce yourself before questioning others, old man." The room buzzed with chatter again. "Wait, isn't that guy Jake's dad?" "Seriously, then who is he?" "I don't know, but he sure seems stern." "Really, after drinking, Jake picks a fight with such a guy? Is he okay?" Without letting the murmurs distract him, my father declared, "My name is Johnson. Mary's. The bride's father." The moment he introduced himself, Jake's face went pale, and the room erupted into even more chaos. "What? The bride's dad? That's super harsh." What was Jake thinking? "With the bride having left and all, looks like her dad's pretty mad, right?" Yeah, seriously, this is one heck of a scene. Despite the commotion, Jake's inebriation showed no signs of wearing off, and he brazenly said to my father, "You're Mary's dad, huh?" "Oh, sorry. It's hard to remember faces from the engagement party who didn't attend. So, my bad." Jake had just picked a fight with my father. But my father, unshaken, retorted, "I leave the household matters to my wife. By the way, I'm a businessman and run these 3 companies." My father handed Jake 3 business cards. Jake's eyes went wide as he read them. "What? Cows Corporation, Sweet Corporation, and Electric Incorporated? Wait, you run all these companies?" Jake's dumbfounded voice echoed throughout the hall. And the crowd in the venue started buzzing again. "Did you hear that? All those are publicly traded companies. Man, that older guy knows his stuff." You can't always judge a book by its cover. And here Jake was, being rude to such an influential man. How embarrassing. Hearing the crowd's reactions, Jake realized the gravity of his mistake, looking visibly embarrassed. It seemed the commotion sobered him up. Just as Jake was about to say sorry to my father, an unexpected figure approached. It was none other than that Jake's friend from his hometown. "Hey Jake, with the way things are going, this wedding's not continuing." The friend smirked maliciously. "Dude." Jake's expression darkened. Why bother holding back any longer? After just a bit of booze, you went off the rails. In the end, you can't escape who you truly are. The friend's expression grew more and more sinister. While it was clear that the friend and Jake were having a conversation, my father seemed to not quite grasp the main point of their discussion. So my father posed several questions to the two. "Hey, what have you guys been talking about? And who exactly are you to Jake?" "Oh, sorry about that. I'm an old acquaintance of Jake's from our hometown." "Well, more like his big bro, you know?" "Looks like you're curious about me too, Mr. Johnson. Should Jake tell ya, or should I spill the beans?" "Anything but that." "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. The truth is, I used to be quite the troublemaker. But then, when it came time to fit into society, I pretended to be this good guy. My true nature isn't that of a good guy, but more like a rebel. It's getting hard for me to suppress this urge. And this guy, he cheated. Called it a little fling before getting married. People can't escape their true nature, right, Jake?" When the friend mentioned that Jake had been cheating, the crowd once again began to murmur and buzz.
"What the? Jake cheated, for real? No way! The good guy Jake."
"Well, it's often the unexpected ones. Jake might have actually cheated." "Exactly. I remember hearing he was a wild one in his student days. This adds up." As whispers grew louder and the crowd became more suspicious, my father questioned Jake. "Is it true that you cheated?" My father's voice was calm and serene, yet unmistakably that of my father. There was no doubt in my mind that he was truly my father, and I felt the weight of the situation deeply. But the very next moment, Jake, as if he had turned into a completely different person, blurted out like this.
"Yeah, it's true. Being with a woman like that, it's exhausting. What's the big deal if I took a little break and cheated?" Jake's face twisted into a devilish grin, his gaze piercing through my father. Jake seemed a completely different person. Even my father seemed overwhelmed by the drastic change in Jake and the evil aura surrounding him. "Jake, you're joking, right?"
Needless to say, witnessing this unfamiliar side of Jake and feeling the palpable tension, my heart felt like it was about to shatter. Yet, in my heart, I still had love for Jake, which somehow kept me holding up. There was no way this could be true. I hoped and prayed it was a lie. I rushed to Jake's side, who had completely changed. My dress got tangled around my legs, slowing me down, but my resolve never wavered.
"Jake, you're just feeling off today and that's why you're saying such things, right? Right? It has to be because of the drinks you had. Right? Please, tell me that's the case."
But my heartfelt pleas seemed to shatter into a million pieces. "What? Just because you're the star today doesn't mean you get to play the tragic heroine. It was clear to me that you never really saw the real me. That's why I couldn't show my true self. But I did love you, that's undeniable. But sometimes, to keep happiness, one needs a break. If you want to walk this life with me, you can't freak out over a little fling here and there. But, I bet you'd say that's asking too much." Jake's words, filled with his selfish and egocentric sentiments, pierced through my heart, and the signs of my emotional instability started to show. Had Jake not said such cruel things, tears wouldn't have streamed down my face. Achilles, the invincible warrior from Greek mythology, would never be hurt if he was attacked anywhere except his ankles, but speaking of me, I couldn't stand Jake's just single blow at all and I crouched down on the floor. The feeling was like being thrown into the abyss. But there was a knight who came to my rescue. It was my father.
"You think it's your prerogative to cheat? You're not a man, you're a demon. Don't you dare touch my daughter ever again with that devilish humanity. This is an order from Mary's father. Got it?"
With a voice filled with fierce determination, my father vehemently rebuked Jake. His strong spirit was undoubtedly to protect his daughter, me. He must have been fighting as a knight in the business world for a long time. Otherwise, his words wouldn't carry such a weight. Jake was clearly shaken by my father's powerful words. But if he backed down now, it'd be admitting his defeat. So perhaps it was the pride within Jake that wouldn't allow him to back down just like that. So, with a last defiant roar, Jake retorted. Who are you to act like a concerned parent now? You didn't even show up for the engagement party because of work. Honestly, it's hard not to laugh hearing you talk. It's clear you weren't there for Mary. Indeed, my father always had been such. In my family's dynamics, objectively and physically, when my father wasn't around, my mother was always there, constantly watching over me. However, I felt that, despite being engrossed in my father's work, my father always kept me in a special corner of his mind. If that wasn't the case, my father wouldn't have gone to such lengths to raise and support me. Looking at my father's strong posture, I could feel the immense love he held for me. To me, my father was no longer the bad guy, he was an invaluable presence, an unwavering ally. I was content enough. Because finally, I could feel my father's love like this. Yet, my father continued to act like a knight, defending me.
How can you say such a thing to someone? You should stop hiding your true, ugly self behind that mask. If you had a new family, it would be easy to see how that would end.
When my father spoke out like that, I hugged him from behind. My father was taken aback by my sudden gesture, frozen in surprise. Not caring about it, I whispered.
It's okay, Dad. We shouldn't waste our time on someone like him. Go back to work. I'm sorry for causing you trouble. Mary.
It felt like a touching moment between a father and daughter was about to unfold, but it was shattered by Jake's loud voice.
What do you mean by someone like him?
Clearly, Jake didn't understand. So, I spelled it out for him.
Let me clarify for you since you seem clueless. I don't like guys who think it's okay to throw cake in people's faces. Don't push your messed up values onto me. I want a divorce from you.
My assertiveness seemed to rival even my father's, leaving Jake speechless. Apparently, the thought of divorcing me was quite a shock even for him.
Mary, are you sure about this?
My father asked, his voice unusually gentle. I'm fine, really. More importantly, Dad, you can go back to work. Sorry for making you deal with the mess. You're wise and strong, the best knight. You shouldn't be involved in such trivial matters. My workaholic father wasn't disinterested in me, he was working hard for my sake. Just realizing that made me so happy.
You fool! You think I could ever abandon you? Do you know how much loneliness I've made you bear all these years?
Saying that my father pulled me into a tight embrace. It goes without saying that I shed tears. Afterwards, I divorced Jake. Jake said things like, I guess marriage wasn't for me. But I was happy to have loved you, Mary, trying to save face even at the end. I figured he probably wanted to make me just some convenient woman. That's why he could say such things after everything that had happened. So I told him off.
I don't know you anymore. Never show your face to me again.
When I said that, Jake looked sad, but I couldn't care less. After the incidents at our wedding, many friends distanced themselves from Jake. Being the kind of person who hates being alone, his current situation must be like hell. As for me, I've been emailing my father since then. My father, always so busy, sends me emails at irregular dates and times in bits and pieces, but he always replies. I reply too, and we've been doing this back and forth, like a rally in tennis. I wish this rally could continue forever. That's about the extent of my current dreams and hopes.
It feels as if the stalled time between my father and me has started moving again, and I'm wrapped in immeasurable joy. Every day, I find myself loving my father more than ever before.